Amber, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I am super fired up to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. We had a great chat just before jumping on here, and I already know just the energy that the listeners are going to gain a ton out of this. So thanks for being here. Let's get started. I'm ready to rock and roll. Are you?
Yes, let's go.
So first things first, listeners always know I always like to ask this first question right off the bat, and that is, your story. How did you get into what you're doing? And you can, what was the I talk about like the pinball effect. My listeners hear this a lot from me, and it's one of the things where life is never always that one way street. Sometimes we go off a couple ways and here and there, and then we figure out, hey, this is what I really wanted to do. So if you don't mind sharing just a little bit of how you got into what you're doing today.
Yeah, gosh, I would love to just because, you talk about the pinball effect. Lord, I've got a massive headache from how much I've been bouncing around my entire life to get where I'm at. But, for me, it is absolutely, and I think with a lot of people, so much of who you are and where you are today, I think really starts when you're a kid. And for me, now with the work that I do as a body transformation expert for women over 40, so much of where I got to that really started when I was a kid. My eyes, all growing up, suffered with a lot of body image issues. Started my first calorie restricted diet at the age of 15. In my early 20s, I was bulimic. I really, really struggled with my sense of self and having confidence and feeling comfortable in my skin. Now, from the outsider looking in, you would never have known that. I was a track runner, I was a cheerleader, I was an athlete. I was never really severely, like really, really overweight. It wasn't until I got married and had kids, my first pregnancy, gained about 65 pounds, and just really very unhealthily lost that. And it just has been this constant theme my entire life of being unhappy in my body. And really, though, for me, kind of the spark that really just all of a sudden turned my life upside down and how I made this massive shift to doing what I'm doing now is in 2018 when my marriage completely fell apart. That was the beginning of the end of my marriage, and at that point, I had been married for about 8 years. I had two children. I had a very successful corporate sales job. Had been doing that for 16 or so years, and from the outsider looking in, things looked great, but they weren't. And in 2019, the beginning of 2019, I was getting ready to turn 40. And I was really at kind of my all time low of just being really, really unhappy. Again, my marriage was in the middle of falling apart. I was just even more so unhappy in my own skin because I really hadn't healed a lot of, oh, I hadn't at all really the a lot of the my own body image issues and just how I felt about myself. And I was just in a low, and I was getting ready to turn 40, and I decided that I really needed some time by myself. I really needed to go inward. This is around the time that because I was going through all of this, I really started to seek answers. I'd always had a spiritual connection. I grew up religiously. I grew up in a Christian home. Actually, I grew up Pentecostal, which you're familiar with that. It's definitely a more extreme version of Christianity. And so I think in my 20s and 30s, I always had that foundation, but spiritually, I think I really had kind of wasn't as close to what I call God. I know you can call it whatever, universe, spirit, whatever, but for me it was God. And so I really started to reconnect, I think, going down that spiritual path of just trying to find some answers, like why the hell was I going through all of this? What was the purpose in in this. Because I knew that, I knew that it wasn't in vain. I knew that that there was some silver lining here. I just didn't know what. So I started really diving into meditation, started really just getting quiet and going more inward and starting to really connect with my intuition and my own voice. For so long I had been kind of in this rat race, working the corporate job, with a husband who traveled all the time, taking care of two small children, really being the house manager, just constantly in this very, this masculine energy all the time, constantly in this push, 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 push mode. And I think I just really lost a lot of myself. And so I was turning 40, and I decided for my 40th birthday, instead of doing my Girls Gone Wild trip to Cabo like I had planned, I decided that I was going to go to do a yoga retreat in Costa Rica by myself. My best friend ended up meeting me over there, but really we were kind of going just to come together for a little bit, but to really do some work by ourselves. And I'll never forget, I was sitting on the beach, and I was meditating, and I was journaling and meditating and really just seeking some answers, asking the questions, what's the point of all of this? And I was starting to really at this time to evaluate, like, where in my life was I really unhappy? I was unhappy with my job. Honestly, it was a great career, but I was bored. And I knew that I was meant for so much more, but I didn't know what. And I was unhappy in my body, and I was unhappy in my skin, and feeling comfortable in my skin. And I was unhappy in my marriage. And so I just started really, really, um, asking questions, and I started writing, very just kind of like brain dumping. One of the most powerful tools that I've found in this whole spiritual awakening, I call it, that I've been down since 2019, is a powerful tool for me, is really just brain dumping, where you literally just pen to paper and just get it out. And so I just started writing down all the things that I loved to do and that I was passionate about. And all of a sudden, um, I'll never forget, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's a very simple word, but in that moment. And if you've had any of these moments, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But in that moment, it was so clear to me, the word coach. And I just wrote it down, and I was like, okay, like I couldn't have heard that any more clear. And I didn't know what that looked like. I definitely felt called to coach women. At that time, though, I had really didn't know that it was going to be centered so much about body transformation, because I was still at the very beginning of starting to heal my own body image issues. So the thought of coaching other women in that regard seemed like that was no way, terrifying, right? Like, how could I coach other women in that when I'm a hot mess with it, right? So I didn't know what it meant. But I did believe it had something to do with the gifts that I had, which was really my interest in nutrition and fitness and all of that. And so, because I'm a doer, I'm a total type A perfectionist, I immediately came back from that trip and I took action. I knew that I didn't know what was going to happen with my marriage. I didn't know any of that, but I knew that I needed to say yes to this. It was so loud and so clear to me that I needed to say yes. And so I did. I enrolled in a year-long integrative nutrition health program. I re-upped my personal training certification. I had it when I was younger, but it was really just to like further my like obsession with fitness and all of that, not really to like do it as a job. And I just started to continue to grow to go down that spiritual path, and to really, really start to lean into the idea that I was exactly where I needed to be. That I didn't, that I'm not, that I didn't have the answers, and I didn't know why I was going through what I was going, but I just knew that I was where I was supposed to be. And I had read at that time a book by Gabby Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back. And that really kind of opened up my eyes to like, okay, I'm going to lean into the pain. I'm going to trust. My faith at that time was so strong that I just knew that that's what I was supposed to be. The path I was on was exactly how it was supposed to be. And it was okay that I didn't have the answers. And for a total, again, type A control person, that was a very, very uncomfortable and scary place for me to be. But I just kept going. I just kept going. And in 2019, it was apparent that divorce was where we were going to head with that. And but I just continued down this road of healing myself, healing my relationship with food, healing my relationship with myself, and really trying to figure out this coaching thing. And I will say that, because again, I'm such a believer that things happen exactly the way they're supposed to and for a reason. And so I launched my business in 2019. And at that time, I think that I was, because of where I was at, and because I just knew that I knew I wanted to help women. And I was so in the middle of my divorce at that time, I really felt like maybe what I was supposed to be doing was like helping women. Young moms maybe with small children and how to navigate that, because I think so many of the issues, looking back and through a lot of therapy, so many of the issues of my marriage stemmed from just the stress of being young parents with young kids and all of that. So I wanted to help women with that. And I launched a business at the end of 2019. And I always joke, I'm like, when I say I launched, like literally I turned on the website. Okay. I knew nothing about being an entrepreneur. I knew nothing about a business. I knew nothing about any of it. But nothing, like crickets, right? Nothing was happening. Then the pandemic hit. And I heard a marketer talk about that getting on that TikTok. I never forget she said this. She said TikTok was kind of like the wild, wild west of social media. And she was really talking about growing a business on TikTok. And so I decided, I was like, well, got nothing else to do. And I'm terrified of myself on video and all of this. But at that time, I always say like my drive to succeed way superseded any sort of insecurity that I had. And so I just did it. And I got on there and I was trying to really figure out how I can connect to women over 40. And so I just started telling my story. I started talking about my lifetime of being a yo-yo dieter, my body image issues, and my just what I had gone through. And I really noticed that women started to connect with that. And before I knew it, I had a following. And before I knew it, I was helping women with weight loss and with body image issues and with fitness and all of that. And hormones and all the things that we deal with life after 40. And it just happened. It just happened. And pretty quickly, God showed me that this is what I was supposed to be doing. Universe, spirit, whatever you call it, they showed me that this is exactly what I should be doing. And it became very, very clear to me that it was time, that it was okay for me to walk away from my 18-year, very successful, multiple six-figure sales job and just dive headfirst into that, because I knew, even though I was scared as hell, I knew that I could always go back to doing sales. I knew, and I had to honor that I had been shown enough, and I trusted that I had been shown enough that I had to give this a chance. And to not do that would be to be denying myself. And I just had to lean into it. And so here we are. Now I'm with you, and that's it.
I love it. What a story. There is so much that I can extrapolate and so many questions come to mind. But would you say perfect timing of starting a business in your type of business and with COVID happening, couldn't it happen any better? Because like you're talking about TikTok, right? And I know a lot of mentors of mine were saying like when this all was starting and the pandemic started happening, the lockdowns were happening, they're like, you can freeze and get all scared and fearful, or you can take advantage of the market, because what are people doing? They're on their phones more now. They're paying attention more to social media and all this other type of stuff, because that's what people spend a lot of time on. Was that perfect timing in a sense? Like when you look back at it now, going, "Wow, that just aligned beautifully," or am I just was it not that at all?
No, I mean, you're so right. I mean, it's so funny though. I will always say though, like that's never exactly a perfect time for anything, right? You always just have to like give it a go and just see and just do it. However, yes, absolutely. I think that when the pandemic hit, there were, in talking with a lot of people that I do on a daily basis, I think, and not to put them in two, categories, but I think there were a lot of people that either went kind of shut down and operated out of fear, which rightfully so is a very scary time. It's still a scary time, but I would say then I think that there was another maybe group of people that said, "Wow, this is the time, like when am I, this is a time for me to really look inward, to take a look at my life, to I would love to see the statistics on how many job changes occurred after the pandemic, right? Like I think because a lot of people took the time to go inward and figure some stuff out. But yes, strictly from a business standpoint, I couldn't have even have dreamed it any better, right? Because I didn't even realize that growing to grow an online business, there was no better time. I'm grateful. I think that what helped me, and I didn't realize that, was just my sales background, and just kind of innately knowing how to operate a business. I think really helped. But yes, I think that for those that were able to hit the ground running and really take action. I think that they came out over the last year definitely ahead. It was crazy for me. It's been crazy.
No, and I can agree more. I had three clients where two of them businesses got shut down. That's it. They couldn't work, and so they shifted careers. And I had another one that decided to choose to shift careers in the midst of it all. And I always kept telling them, just we worked on the mindset side of things, but I said, don't worry. When you get a year from now, just imagine where you're going to be. And they look back now and they're like, I don't know how I could have done it. My life, everything has expanded. How can that happen during a freaking pandemic? And I'm like, because, and I kind of went through the background of why that happens, but it's one of the things where, that, like you said, there's people who it's fear or taking action, right? I can be in
Totally.
fear mode. This is the environment's going to dictate me. Or type A personality people do the opposite. Well, I control my environment, so this is what I'm doing and this is how it's going to happen. I love that.
Totally.
How hard was it for you? Because I'm a type A personality, driver, task oriented individual, all that. How hard was it for you to shift out of your mind and trust that intuition? And I know my background's in chiropractic, so I do a lot of neuro stuff. And there's a left brain, right brain. You're probably more. I'm basing on gender only. Left women are more left brain weak, right brain dominant. So that's why, like when you're talking about like the dumping effect, how it helped you so much. It's very good for individuals who have a right brain dominant brain because you need to get this stuff out of you. Left brain dominant individuals, mostly males, we need to physically get it out of us. That's because of how the left brain works. But how hard was it for you was it easy or hard to shift into that intuition and to trust that process?
I mean, it's something I work on every day. I mean, it's incredibly hard. I think when you are such a, again, type A, task oriented, all of that, there's absolutely a level of control there too. And when things, because again, like you said a minute ago, those people that say, "Oh, hey, I control what I'm doing. During the pandemic, I'm going to do all this and that." And for people like you and I who are doers, to when things are out of our control, that is really unsettling. At least it is for me. Very unsettling. Very uncomfortable. But you just get to the point where you either have to accept it or you go out of your freaking mind, right? Like because when you can get to that point where you really can just accept that this is out of your control, then you have to say, okay, so I'm here and I've now accepted that this is out of my control. Because we're action oriented people, we say, okay, so then now what? Right. So now what? And I think that just kind of continues on. So, okay, like I've accepted that I'm here, but so now what? And so now I think that in connecting with your intuition, I think that it just allows you to really feel a little bit more grounded. I think it allows you to operate a little bit closer to your authentic self, to have a little bit more confidence in the decisions that you make. And so I know for me, in order to really hear that voice, because I think, especially as just busy people, have so much noise constantly coming in that we really can very easily lose that interconnection, that intuition, that voice. And so for me, what's been really, really, really powerful is meditation, is getting quiet. And I know meditation means a lot to a lot of different people. And I don't meditate my style of meditation changes daily depending on what I need. Sometimes it's guided, sometimes I'm praying, sometimes it's, just going into the abyss. It's all of the above. But I think that, it was really hard to let go. But once I was able to get there, I think from there, it was just, again, a matter of staying connected with myself and figuring out things in my day, like journaling, like even doing some breath work. How could I just honor myself by quieting out everybody else?
Love that. And is there, I appreciate you bringing up the meditation part, because I was going to ask what tools help you get out of that state, right? You might be asking, how long have you been meditating for?
I would say like consistently, I would say for the last couple years. I think I tried to dabble in it before, but it's funny because I teach meditation to a lot of my clients. It is something that I absolutely incorporate because even from a health standpoint, I mean, the amount of cortisol that pumps through our body on a daily basis, having some tools. And as you know, I mean, cortisol is a huge connection to your ability to lose weight, just your overall health, all of it. So for me, having those tools in your pocket of how to lower that is really, really important. But I think that wait, I got stuck on the cortisol, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like, I lost my train of thought here. Wait, I get going on this, and then you're asking me about how long I've been meditating, and
Yep. Just
okay,
how
yeah,
long you've been meditating, and
yeah,
then what are like another thing I can ask too, because I always love seeing what it has done for individuals, because meditation is to me, I think everyone should be meditating. It's one of
totally.
those things where I won't even get into the neuroscience behind what it does for the brain and how it shifts things, but what were some of the things too, just to add on to it all? How has meditation changed your life in a sense? So not only did it get you out of your head and get more intuitive, what are other things maybe you've noticed, just so the listeners can hear? Because I love for them to always, I talk about meditation a lot, breath work, and all those good things. And it's one of those things where people will be like, okay, doc, yeah, that sounds great. Especially my patients, I'll say, hey, do breath work. I'm telling you, the technology, what I use and analyze things for their nervous system, I'm always like, you just got to do this, this, and this. This is what's going to happen here. And we'll get to where we need to get to. Just trust the process. And they're always like, yeah, breathing, or I'm not going to sit down and meditate. I just can't. But what are some other things you've noticed that meditation has helped you out with in your life also?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I remembered as you were talking exactly what I was going to say, which was when you said people are saying, like, I just can't meditate. I just can't. Well, I think that is so much of what my mindset was before I had a meditation mentor. And she really kind of taught me. And this is what I teach a lot of my clients too. And for people that are type A, that they say, like, the reason why I don't meditate is because I can't shut my thoughts down. There is a misconception that meditation is shutting your thoughts down, right? That is impossible. We have what, like, is it like 80,000 thoughts or something in a day, something absurd? And what I really learned, and I think when I got this, when I really really got this really helped me. Number one, meditation. The reason why they call it practice is because it's a practice. There's a guy that I love, a teacher, an awesome teacher named Light Watkins, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Light Watkins teaches meditation. He makes it very very accessible. And what he talks about is that meditation really is like mental push-ups, right? And when you're meditating, it's not about silencing your brain because that's impossible. What it is it's about having a thought, recognizing that you're having the thought and learning to release it and set it aside. And my meditation mentor always referred to that as almost like coming back home, whether home is to your breath, home is to a mantra, like, and depending on what's going on, or if you're new to the practice, you may have a 5-minute meditation session and literally have to come back home, like catch yourself going down the rabbit hole of thoughts. And you could be 3 minutes in and you've already done your to-do list for the next 7 weeks. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm supposed to be meditating here. I need to breathe. That is totally normal. And what I found is that you get better at it. Where in the beginning, I could do a 5-minute session and I would literally have to come home, come back to the breath, pull myself out of the rabbit hole 75 times. And now I'm better at it. I'm better again. Goes back to the mental push-ups, the practice. So if any of you are listening, somebody like me that is like completely type A and has a million thoughts and is always bouncing from one thing to the next, know that that's normal and that it really is, it takes practice. But what I found that really changed my life is that I was able to take that work of being able to pull myself out of obsessive thoughts, and I was able to take that off the cushion, or off my floor, wherever it is you're meditating. I was able to take that off and out into the world because I am somebody that, and especially I know a lot of ladies too, and men do this too, I imagine, but like we get going down that talk track, right? And obsessive thoughts and thinking things and replaying things over and over and over again. And it can make you crazy. And when you can learn to shut that down, when you can learn to shut it down and let it go, that is a game changer. And I know for me, especially when I was going through my divorce, when I was going through, even now, when I start going down that rabbit hole of feeling I'm not good enough, or my self-worth, or all of that, when you're able to take what you really work on in meditation and bring that out into the world, it just allows you, I think, to release a lot of that negative thought and kind of talk yourself off the ledge pretty much more quicker. That's at least for me. I don't know if you found that, but for me, that's what's been a game changer.
No, totally. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, and for the listeners too, I mean, I've been meditating now, 14 years. And it's one of those things where you talk about like, even like thoughts, right? 50 to 70,000 thoughts go through our mind each day. So you're never going to get away from them. But it's one of those things where even like coming back home, or I always just say like your focus is going to go away, and then you bring it back here to center in the moment. And it still happens even to this day, as long as I've been meditating, and I meditate every single day, at least 10 minutes minimum. It will happen from time to time. Sometimes I've been racing. My mind's been racing a lot. I have a lot going on. So sometimes when I go into my meditation, it's like I can feel like the distractions are still happening. And I'm like, hey, calm. Let's just get back. Use the breath, right? Center. You got to get back to center. So for the listeners, that still happens. That's why I love how you said it's practice, because it's still one of those times where, because even some of my clients and some people who follow me, they're always like, oh yeah, you've been meditating for so long. You could just go be like a Buddha and just go sit in a corner and be done. I'm like, no, I'm human. What are you talking about? Like no, I get distractions. Those thoughts that you go down a rabbit hole. Yep, that happens to me. I'll get into a deep thought and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, 2 minutes went by. What am I doing? Let's get back here, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So totally connected with that. One of the questions I want to pull back from your story to bring it up here is you talked about settling in. How hard was it for you to settle in, trust knowing that where you are is where you need to be? Because I truly believe that is something that humans have a hard time with. Again, we like to control. Ego likes to control. We like certainty. We don't like uncertainty. I think that's why fear was such a huge thing. I know we can talk, there's the virus and the whole thing and all that, but there was the uncertainty of life, of what life is going to look like because of this and the lockdowns, and then when's it going to change? So that uncertainty factor, I think, really brought out more fear in people. What are some things, I love that I always ask, how did you settle in? What was there conversations? What did you do to get to that point, especially as a type A? And I know we probably are crossing over with some things we've already talked about. And then, just looking at, we'll start from there.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, going through, especially really during the time of my divorce and when my marriage was unraveling, it was really that mentality and that mindset is what got me through on a daily basis. And sometimes it's what got me through on a minute by minute basis. I think because when you experience trauma or when you are going through something, and it doesn't have to be as traumatic as a divorce, it could be you lost your job, or it could be maybe you're having some financial issues or whatever it is. I think that there definitely can be a difference between settling into knowing that you're exactly where you need to be, and then also taking action. Just because you're accepting that this is where you need to be doesn't mean that you can't take action to change your situation. But what that does mean, though, is I think for me at least, it created a level of acceptance. And once I was able to accept that this is where I was, then I was able to take action a little bit from a different standpoint. And so, on a daily basis, I think when, especially again, keep going back to like type A and control and all of that I am, I think that, when you're going through something very painful, it's very natural to like want to have answers and want to know like why, how is this going to end? And what's this? And you can, again, make yourself crazy. And I think when you can settle into, okay, I don't know. I don't know what the answer here is going to be, but I just trust that I am exactly where I need to be, and that's all I need to know for this minute. And that's all I need to know for today. And it can just really help you, again, on a second by second, a minute by minute basis, just allow yourself to lean into it and just let go of the control. Because with so much, when you're trying to control stuff, the outcome and the answers and all of that, it creates such, at least it did for me, such a level of anxiety and stress and fear. And when you can really, again, lean into it and just say, okay, I'm here and I don't know why I'm here, but what can I do what can I do for me to change how I feel about this, to change how I feel right now? Gabby Bernstein talks about this in her last book, where she talks about the choose again method, where, and you're probably familiar with this, it's like you have a thought or you're having a feeling. And, I think as humans are very, we can, again, attach ourselves to this thought, like we just talked about, and kind of go down that rabbit hole. And really that just begins a whole negative talk track. But you really can have a thought, and the first step is to forgive yourself for the thought. No judgment. Forgive yourself for that thought, and then you can, in that moment, you can choose again. In that moment, you can choose again, and how you want to feel and how you want to look at things. And so for me, when I was going through a lot of that stuff, and I would start to have a lot of fear and anxiety about how this was going to end in my life and how all this was going to look, I would stop and I would choose again. And my choose again thought was, I'm exactly where I need to be. This is painful, but I trust that there is that there is an end, and there's a light to this tunnel, at the end of this tunnel. So for me, it's been huge.
I love that. Now, in my work, I always do a lot of things with, because my whole emphasis is mindset. So one of the things is perspective. Did you do things where choose again method? Where do you create? So in my work, I always tell people, like, if this is this is what you think it is, or this is how you're seeing it. Okay, great. That's one perspective out of infinite. So how about we take a step back, go back to neutral, and let's look at a different perspective and create a whole different story of what you want that to be. And then we can go the worst, the middle, where you think it is. Here's the worst case scenario. Let's just go to the worst, and then we'll go to what's the best. And then you choose which story that you want to see be fulfilled. Or you can just create something that's in the middle. Let's say you're like, this is where I think, this is where I really was. Here's the worst it can be. Here's the absolute best, but here's where I'm, whatever it may be, you get to choose. And do you ever do like story, like looking at like your story of how you wanted that to be, like projecting and saying, no, this is what I'm choosing. Here's the story I'm going to tell myself. Here's the thoughts. Here's how I'm going to view this. And that's it. There's no other, I'm deciding, in other words, now in that way.
Oh my God, I'm smiling ear to ear only because I just literally just went through this yesterday. So I am now like in the dating world, right? Which I haven't been in the dating world in like 15 years. Okay. And like, it's a scary place to be at 42. I haven't dated in 15 years. And so, so yesterday I was going through this thing where I was talking to my mom, and I was like, well, I don't know, mom, he hasn't even texted me all day. Like, I don't the thing, right? Takes me back to I was like 15. I'm like, what the heck? And so I was like, that, gosh, maybe that means he doesn't like me anymore. Like, I just don't know. I felt totally like a teenager. And my mom was like, okay, so let's worst case scenario, let's paint this out. She's like, but let's also flip the script, right? Let's look at, you also haven't texted him all day, right? So let's look at this and let's look at this. And so we sort of played out the different scenarios. Okay, well, maybe he was busy with his job or whatever it is. And so, yes, absolutely. And so then I immediately was like, okay, because I think that we definitely, and again, this is human nature, and I think that our mind wants to always go to the worst case scenario, right? Like our mind always wants to go to the worst thing, whatever that is in life. And so I absolutely think having that perspective shift where it's literally whether you're talking it out or you're kind of writing it down, but having that tool in your arsenal where you're able to really take a step back and be like, okay, I'm going to play out these different scenarios and I'm going to choose which perspective that I take on this. And it sounds like such a simple exercise, just like the choose again method. It sounds like such a simple exercise, but it really is so powerful. So anyways, but yeah, that's why I was laughing so hard because I was like, yes, I actually just went through that last night. So
I love it. No, it's just one of the, and it's fascinating because I learned this years ago because I would always, again, control looking at one thing versus another. And then I was like, hold up, you're the creator. Universe always has, I always say the universe always works for me. Like all these universal laws, all these principles I studied, they're laws. So they have to work. So eventually I was just like, you know what, I'm going to choose a different story, right? Because sometimes you go down one path and it's like you hit a roadblock and it's like, okay, what's this story going to mean? So then you create the meaning of what it want. And if you really hone in on it, it becomes that for you. Like,
yes.
and I can go down so many rabbit holes with that, but it's
Oh
one
my
of
God,
those
me
things
too.
where, right. But like you were sharing it, like a relationship thing. And it's like, going into that and you can look at it one way. We go down negative is so easy to go.
So easy.
Right? So easy. The mind it's so much more power and attraction to that area of the brain. But then there's that other side where it's like, but hold up, wait a minute. What if there's a whole, like we always say, this is the worst thing that can happen. What is the best thing that can happen? And what if, it's kind of like the same saying, like I always tell people, shoot for the stars. If you land on the moon, you still did something outside this planet. So it's like it's the kind of the same concept. Here's the best scenario I want to have. This is kind of like it is, but don't be attached, right? And then you just let go and say, I trust. This is what I'm putting my energy to, and I'm trusting, and that's the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't. I was talking about this book with a girlfriend of mine the other day, and all of a sudden now I'm like, I can't. Now I'm trying to remember the exact name of the book, but basically it was just talking about our reality is just the story that we tell ourselves. I mean, that's pretty much it. Our reality, and we all have our own reality, and it's crazy because the story that we tell ourselves is completely different from what somebody else is experiencing. And of course, that goes from our own basis of our own limiting beliefs and childhood and all the psychology of that. But yes, like life is really just the story we're telling ourselves. That's it. I mean, that is it. And so I was like, God, that's so true. It's so true.
It is. And that's where, like, this again, coming back around to meditation, right? And it's one of those things where I always tell people, like, I wrote my first book, I said that, meditation really is just a practice of focus. That's really what it's designed to be.
Mhm.
Now, that focus can be whatever you want it to be. You can focus on, like you're saying, sometimes I just want to go into abyss. Sometimes you can meditate just to try to get some, like if I'm working through something and I'm like, all right, let me go into a safe, let me get to my safe place, my bliss state is what I call it. And then from there, the things will come. I'll just get there. I'll trust. I know it's going to come. And it may not be that one, maybe in between meditations or whatever, but it'll be that point. But it's what you're saying is the stories we tell ourselves do create our reality, and especially the words and all these other things. But it's that focus we put in, right? Because that's what we're really doing. If you think about it, when you think about a story that you may have said over and over and over, something may have happened, and you share that story. You keep giving that life to it, and the more you keep doing it, it's still gonna show up because ego has to do that for you. It's the purpose of the brain.
Yep.
And then in the process you were sharing, it's one of those things how to then shift the story, shift perspective, and your life will drastically change.
Totally. Totally. I love it.
Well, I
Yes.
love this. This is awesome. Real quick, how can people connect with you? Find out all you're doing. I know you got a podcast coming out, so share all those
Yeah.
details, and I'll have it in the show notes also.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram and also on TikTok. I'm Miss Amber Shaw. So that's MS Amber Shaw. My website as well, ambershaw.com, will have all the details coming up about the podcast. It's going to be released at the end of July. So it's the Wellness Revolution with Amber Shaw. We're going to be talking nutrition and fitness and mindset and relationships and really all things life after 40. So I'm super, super pumped.
And everybody, that will be in the show notes. Amber, I appreciate you. This was an awesome combo. Thanks for taking time to
Yeah.
share space with us and all the listeners here at the Mindful Experiment. This was a blast.
It was amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.